good. You asked me a question just before I started recording, and yeah, I'm basically just getting sort of back into the rhythm, like the post-COVID rhythm, if you will.
Rhythm.
Yeah, it's what I feel like I've been doing anyways, just getting back into my businesses and getting them off, off the ground again. And um, but it's different. It is definitely different. The feeling is different, the energy is different. I feel like before COVID, I was sort of feeling like like I was on a momentum and there was someplace I wanted to get to. And now it just feels like I'm excited to be back in the rhythm of things. But at the same time, I guess what I'm seeing is kind of like the universe is trying to show me things. It's sort of like I'm not leading the way anymore. Like before, I was sort of in control, thinking I was in control of, in charge of my businesses, that kind of thing. Now it's just like, do this. And then, so there's a lot of hurry up and wait, the opportunities have come to me and I thought, oh boy, I can do this and this and this and this. And then something comes in there and says, hold on a minute. Okay, we'll just digest this a little bit and we'll have that sink in and it'll go at its own speed. So I'm still learning a lot of patience and a lot of letting go. So that's kind of how I can describe my life right now.
Is that a new place I see you in, or is that the old place with I haven't spoke to you. I don't know when the last time was, my friend.
Yeah, it was months and months. But I had this background up for 6-8 months at least, I guess. So
that could be. It could easily be that long. I don't know.
Well, I do blur out the background sometimes. So what might have happened is I wasn't happy with the background. So I just, Zoom lets you, do that, give you that option. So
I didn't green screen myself on purpose today. So it's, yeah. I've got it on a wall behind me. In fact, I wonder if I could just do that. No. Oh, yeah, it's actually turned black. That's actually a green screen.
Logo just showed up out of nowhere.
No, nothing would. It's fascinating. So you're talking to, what you're saying there is basically the universe is giving you opportunities to experience. Some people call them tests.
But I don't know if I'd call it a test. But yeah, some people might call it a test for sure. I feel like it's more of a learning, and like I'm learning a lot just by the waiting that I have to do, because there are times when I have nothing I can really do except wait. So what it's showing me is that I've come from a place of not trusting anything, including even myself.
We spoke to this yesterday. One of them, again, very, very interesting. I don't mean to cut you off. I just mean to interject. One of the big things that we found is mistrust. It's prevalent in people trusting others, but ultimately that comes back down to not trusting yourself.
Yeah, and
it's one of the major things in a lot of people that is very prevalent right now, is that mistrust is coming to the surface because, as I'm sure you will recognize, trust and leaps of faith are necessary, right? And if you recognize that you've got mistrust in yourself, then the only way you can do anything about that is to start to trust. And really that takes a leap of faith, especially after many, and I'm the same, right? After many years of not having trust, or, especially in my own self and of others, even though I did trust others foolishly, and that was just showing me that I needed to trust myself a little bit more. That leap of faith it's right at the top of the list of things to do right now with people, is to make different choices on a leap of faith based on trust in themselves. And that's one of the hardest things I think that people are dealing with right now. What would you say to that?
I agree. I would add a caveat to that. When I hear, or a caveat for me anyways, see how it feels for you. When I say trust myself, if I were to apply it to myself, what you just said, I would add the word higher, trust my higher self, because there's still that ego side of me that says, oh, you know what, well, why don't you do this? Well, you're a dummy if you do that. Or no, people will say this, or what will people think if you do this? You know, those thoughts are still there too. So, but there is that knowing, that inner knowing that comes up, and it's a subtle difference, and you know, sometimes it gets lost in the screaming voices of the ego, or whatever you want to call that. So yeah, there's even that. There's a distinguishing that I think still needs to happen, in at least in my world.
There's this, we've been talking to the, I mean, talk about to trust, man, and hurry up and wait. What we've been now, I've been in Denmark for 5 months, I think, and I'm sat in a room, 4 walls in a house that's not mine, and I've got to leave tomorrow, and I've got nowhere to go. And a beautiful divine gift next to me, and we haven't got any plans or anywhere to go yet. We don't know. Literally, we're gonna get in the car. No, not tomorrow, Sunday, to probably drive to Holland on Monday with no plan and no idea. And that's that. You let the universe bring it to you.
Yeah. Well, your life has been like that, you know, since you moved out of your flat, if I can call it that.
It doesn't solve, but yeah, it's but even in the last 2 years since this ridiculous plan, well, nearly 3 years now, it was the same, so I quit everything then. But what I was going to talk about was the stories, the conspiracy theories that we tell ourselves from the ego self. What's transpired and what we've been talking to here anyway with a few of my divine brothers is the mechanism behind that, and what people would call consciousness, or conscious versus subconscious, unconscious, the unconscious mind versus the conscious mind, and how these stories override the consciousness. And this is where our trust in ourselves is. So the conscious mind is the trust in yourself, and with a certain degree of that, it's the amount of truth you can hold. So in what esteem do you hold yourself in what how much of this is real, and in what esteem can you hold yourself in, i.e. how much integrity, moral value or virtue you're holding yourself in, and what level of truth that's at. And when that's embodied into the conscious mind, then the subconscious stories, the ego, you can't do this, what about them, they're going to say this, they're going to judge you like that, that's going to fail, this, it doesn't even impact, it doesn't hit, because the conscious mind says no, that's the way. And this is where that embodiment comes from the heart. So the heart then guides the mind, and the mind doesn't have to think. So all of the stories, the thinking, I can't do that, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, they're going to judge me, that won't work, all of those stories don't matter, because you're not thinking, you're just being, if you will. And this is another one of those interesting ones that people are going through right now, where like you just said, the stories come in and they overpower you, they make you timid, they pull you back, they make you not sure, uncertain. These sort of concepts come in, and don't know, which of course doesn't allow for freedom, if you will. It brings a certain amount of distress or dis-ease. These things come in purely from those conspiracy theories that we tell ourselves. It's craziness, but we do it to ourselves, and we all have, and we all do. And it's still, don't get me wrong, it's automated now in me most of the time, but there's still the stories come in, and I still got to laugh at them and smile and say, no, bye. But it becomes easier once you start to walk it a bit more. And that's not being disrespectful or demeaning. It's just purely truth. As you stand in what you are, as a divine being, eternal, divine, and infinite.
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe it, as you start to embody that and know it, and the universe is here to give you everything you need. There is nothing, you cannot do anything that isn't perfect.
Yeah, I love hearing that, because that's like, to me, I can sum that up for the way it lands for me is self-forgiveness, or just forgiveness, or forgiveness of oneself, and the choices and actions that you've taken and made. But yeah, I kept thinking as you were talking that I can give you a very tangible example of that based on what's going on with me right now. And I'm going to do it. So bear with me. Back in August, I was basically up against the wall financially. You know, like I had no money left over, no credit left over. Um, not sure if I was going to have enough income to pay the rent for September, but I knew that some things were coming around the corner. And then I, almost on a whim for my Amazon business, I saw this interview on YouTube through an organization that I work with in my business, who is very creative at heart. And this group they interviewed was providing funds for businesses like mine who needed funds. So I had already applied for a few funds with a few different organizations and rejected. And it just felt good. So I did it. And I said, what the heck? I mean, they're only going to say, the worst they can say is no. And I've been there before. So we can, move from there if that happens. But they actually said yes. So all of a sudden, I got really excited and had all these thoughts and had all these things and actions. I think I should do this and I need to do that. And I was really, really inspired and wanted to do a lot of work and take a lot of action. And it just seemed like it was like 2 steps forward, wait, and wait, and then 2 steps forward, and then 1 step back and wait, and wait. So it was kind of like that. And another opportunity has now shown itself that kind of dovetails nicely into what I've been doing, which is basically a business that does all the legwork. They have all the people that do what I do, but they do it on a larger, wider scale, so that all I have to do is pay them a flat fee every month, and then they do all the work for me. And I'm excited at one time, but then at the same time, I go, okay, well, what are they, so I get into my mind and my thoughts and say, well, what about this and what about that? Like there's the ethics of it. I'm going, do I want to be supporting a business that sells stuff that maybe will just end up in the landfill and just perpetuate more of what we've had all this time? So there's that ethical side of me that I'm having a debate, with right now as to whether I jump on board, because, there's a lot of different reasons why I could do it as well as couldn't do it, like choose not to do it. And so there's that consternation. But I remembered as you were talking, actually, what feels right, what feels like the right thing to do. And ironically, to my surprise, I feel like I want to do this. I feel inspired to go down this path. Again, not necessarily because, it's an ethical thing or not, like that kind of thing. I'm feeling like I'm going down this path to learn something. Like the universe is saying, go down this path. Yes, it may not completely line up with all of the different morals that you say you have, but there's something in it for you. There's something in it for you to see. And you maybe can't see it right now, but how does it feel? There's the ultimate question, I think, that it always boils down to. How does it feel? What feels like the right thing to do with this? And so I get excited when I think about it. I get excited about being, like sitting back and doing nothing and having someone else do the work and then get the spoils. It sounds to me like there's a lesson in there for me, like just being able to accept that life can be that easy.
Yeah, why not? If you can work on the basis that no decision is wrong, mistakes only happen in rear view mirrors. When we reflect back on something, it's a mistake. In the moment, you can't make a mistake, can you? Because you do the right thing. You do the thing. It's just whether it comes out the way we anticipate. And if you look at it like you just said, everything's an opportunity to learn, even though I look at it as an opportunity to experience, because I don't like everything being a test. But that's just me. Stop testing me. But if you go down it on that route with no expectation and just say whatever happens, happens, and you're guided to it, it feels right, regardless of all those stories about this could be this and this could be that. How do you know? One of the things I speak to is unnecessary events in choices. So when we make choices, we sometimes make choices that create unnecessary events because we could have made a different choice earlier. But the only way that you can make a different choice earlier is by making that choice previously, so that you know not to make it again. in these events. So again, with all of these choices that we make in the moment, we call mistakes. They're not. They're purely chances to experience, so we can make more refined choices next time. And then if we choose to do it again, we could see that as an unnecessary event, but it's still perfect. It was just not necessary. We could have made a choice before. And so all of these things actually lead us from perfection towards completion, as Randy would say many, many times.
Many times.
Yeah, but this is the point about not allowing those stories to override the consciousness. If you feel, why not? I feel to do this. And then all the stories tell you not to. You've got to go back to that original feeling and just do it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
It is that straightforward. And unfortunately, that's the same with a lot of this stuff. Of course, we have a feeling to do something, and then the stories come in and they fuck everything up. They tell us this, that, and the other, and we go off on a tangent somewhere else, and then wonder why we're tail spinning somewhere, and looking back at something I wanted to do. Now I'm over here. It makes no sense. But everybody's going through this right now in their different ways.
Well, as again, I learned so much just by listening to you when you share what you get from things that I get, which is why I love these conversations that we have. We just seem to feed each other. The word arrogance came to mind, like the arrogance that my ego has to think that it can actually control things, that it can actually, because ultimately the universe just says, I'll give you whatever you want. Your ego can make whatever decision it wants and you can act from that if you like. But ultimately the ego the way I saw it in this little vision just a moment ago, was the ego is just a yappy voice, not much else. And the universe just says, you want that? Okay, I'll give that to you. Okay, well, no, you want this? Okay, I'll give that to you. Whatever you're putting your energies on. So why not let the ego, quietly or not so quietly sit on the sideline and yak all at once, and you just follow your feelings more and see what that leads to you to.
It's the heart versus the mind. The thinking mind is not a good. I've said this before. Is a terrible master, but a wonderful slave. And if you allow the heart to guide you, or the feminine aspect, if you will, to guide the mind, and the masculine mind to actually supply the love for the feminine, everything works beautifully. The ego is the thinking mind, and all of the control systems and the weak masculine and feminine versions of ourselves. So the weak masculine needs to control, the weak feminine needs to control. The strong ones don't. They just allow and enjoy. So all of the stories are from a weak aspect in ourselves, and we think they're so powerful. We think we're so good when we're listening to our stories. And I can be testament to this. The stories are nearly all powerful. They give you all of the excuses and all of the reasoning that you need to justify your actions. And I could spin people into knots with the reasoning of why I did things and why I shouldn't have done those things, and it's all based on stories. Once you can sit them down and quell them and just go on that feeling, you stand in such a much more powerful place, and it's secure. It's not that insecure that the stories want you to believe. This place is so much more secure, but this is prevalent. This is this lifting of or balancing of the ego out of the fear spectrum. That's what we're talking to, William, here, is love versus fear. That's all it is. It's or a love versus a lack of love. I don't need to call it fear, but a love of yourself versus a lesser self. Call it that if you want. Guilt, shame, blame, pride. Yeah. Or compassion, empathy, courage, acceptance, willingness, and all of these things in that level. And of course, they don't say, I'm not sure about this because they may judge me. This doesn't care about judgment from the external. I mean, there's one thing, there's a beautiful thing, I think I posted in our channel about what existence means versus transcendence. And existence is outside of the self, literally means outside of the self. So when we consider ourselves to be existing, we are outside of the self. It's all external.
Yeah.
When we are transcendent, we have proximity to the self, i.e. internal. So, and you know how powerful it is for the finger pointing at you and how others can be so judgmental, or you could feel a failure I did this and I failed. What did you fail at? Who's judging you? Who's the one that's calling you a failure if it's not just you saying that you failed? And on what basis did you fail? The external, existential basis or the transcendental self? It can never fail.
Yeah.
This is a game. How can you fail? But that's the stories.
It you know, like I always like to pay attention to thoughts that come to my mind as I'm listening to you. And this last go round, I started to think, I seem to have so much more clarity when I'm talking to someone who is connected to themselves, or at least knows about the connection that we all have to our higher selves. And I just kept thinking, you know, I see a lot of power in myself when I am talking to you specifically, Lee, because I'm able to talk these things out. And yet, when I'm inside my own space, inside my own world, not talking to anybody else, then I seem to be more in that existence phase that you just spoke of. So I'm grateful that I have this opportunity, and it's showing me something too. And I'm almost feeling an inspiration, if you will, that maybe more of this might be very useful for me. More of this, not necessarily all just with you, but with other conscious people, to have conversations, not for any end result, like not to get an audience necessarily, and not to get approval from the viewers or any of that kind of stuff, but just being able to allow a dialogue, because wherever two or more are gathered, there is great wisdom there. You know, that expression, and I love that. But I'm seeing it differently, and I don't know what it is about. I think there's something energetically too, like a synergy or something that, like, I definitely feel it with you. When I'm talking with you, all of a sudden, where is all this wisdom coming from? You know, it's like, I don't talk to myself like by myself like this. So that's where I get really grateful and for opportunities like this. And I was going to say I shouldn't.
Should not go on.
Shouldn't not do this more often if you do the double reversal on that.
Oh, you're going to say that.
This
Okay.
way, it would be fun and beneficial and exciting to do this more often with more people.
I don't listen. What I realized a long time ago is that the lower consciousness chats, the small talk, it does nothing. It's just, what's the word, entropic. It withers, it pulls down energy, and you just, there's nothing to it. There's nowhere to go. It's not amplification. It doesn't excite. There's no upliftment. But like you said, when two or more are gathered in, or whatever we want to put to the end of that, it becomes negentropic. It becomes amplification. It becomes what's the word? I can't remember the word. Multiplicative. The energies become multiplicative. There's nowhere to hide. Exponentially multiplicative. There's nowhere to hide with the lower thought processes. If they come in, they'll be seen. They hide away. They don't come in to start telling you all of these things, because they'll just get picked up. It's the room in the light. They're dark thoughts, and they're trying to come into the light, and there is none. Mm-hmm. There is no room for them in these conversations, which is why I enjoyed them so. I enjoyed them so much, and I must admit, my brother, it's I speak to very few people now, very few. I can go days without speaking to anybody at all, quite happily. Yeah, and a lot of us do. So the ones that we do choose to speak to should be uplifting and feel right in these moments. Don't get me wrong. There are times when, with what I'm doing with GPMS, etc., that we end up with lots of different conversations with different people. But that's a role. When I'm being Lee, if you will, these are the conversations I want, where we can talk to things openly and discuss things that are higher, if you want, or vulnerabilities, or go into it a little bit more. I've been fortunate enough to be cooped up here with a couple of divine brothers, and I call this a bit of a refinery, where we can have 3 or 4 hour conversations and go into the mechanics of each level of the game. And I'll talk a little bit to this. So the mechanics at each level of the choices, or the peeling of the onion, as people say, they have layers. Mm-hmm. And each upliftment has many layers within it, to get to what I term, or many term, embodiment. It's all very well knowing, thinking facts intellectually, but actually embodying them and walking them so that they're not thought about, they are embodied fully, and there is nothing you can do about that then. They are now you. So these become the basis of virtue. These become the basis of integrity. So everything you say must by definition come from a pure thought. If you're going to be true to your word, then you must be true to your thoughts. If you're going to be true to your thoughts, then what is it that you're thinking? And why are you thinking anything? Why aren't you knowing? So where does the basis of thinking come from? If you've embodied something, then you know it. You don't need to think about it. So you've got to be true to your thoughts. Well, why have you got any thoughts? Shouldn't that be dead? And you just go into the knowing of what it is that you are in any moment. And these sort of levels of peeling back the onion, if you will. But there's a mechanic that I've been speaking to that actually works through all of these levels. There's a base principle for them all, and it's all the same. Each layer of going from where you were into the complicated and then back again. So as you step into your next role, you don't know what's going to happen. Your next choice. So you're going to go into this thing that you're going to go into, and all of a sudden it's complicated. It's outside of your control. Okay. So there's all these things, there's all these questions that you've got. And the ego wants to know them all before you do anything. It wants to all these questions. What about this? What about that? What about the other? And of course, you're at this point, and all of these sit here. So you can't know what to do until you've gone through all of these questions. And these create doubt, fear. Once you, this is why I do this and back again. So each level of the onion, you go into the next bit, make a choice, and then it's scary or fearful. Yep. You go past them, and then it becomes simple again. And then you go to the next one, and it goes like that, and simple again. Next one, and it's simple again. But this is pattern recognition. And all of your life, you've done this. And yet, and me and everybody else, all of our lives, we've done this. And every single level, we found that it didn't kill us. And we learned a lot from it. And then we went into the next bit, and it didn't kill us. And we learned a lot from it. And we went to the next bit. Yet when we try to do it again, it brings all these fears in again, as if it's something new. And it isn't. It's something very, very old, and something we're very, very used to. But it takes that leap of faith, if you will, to get past these questions, to say, I will embody that before I've answered everything. And when you get to a certain level of this, there is no way to answer the questions, because the questions are just too big. So now you have a choice. You either sit with fear, or you just simply keep going and going and going. So it's fascinating to break it down and see it actually open up. Pattern recognition, what happened in the past. Mm-hmm. I don't like bringing the past to today, but just take the principle out of the past, not the emotion. So a lot of this forgiveness is about neutralizing emotion. That's the way I look at a lot of this. It's not putting a positive onto a negative. It's going into the negative and saying, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing brilliantly. And you were perfect, because there was nothing negative about it. It's just our memory that has it as negative. So every event that we went through that we think was bad wasn't. It's just that's our perception of it. So then we can go back, we can neutralize that by realizing it was perfect, because it made us what we are today. These sort of concepts. Again, many people do it in different ways. But that pattern recognition, I think that you might pick up on that one and maybe consciously override a lot of these thought processes. If you know every other time that you've done this, it worked out fine. Yeah. So why wouldn't this?
Yeah, and I am starting to see that, not necessarily so much in my life, until we have conversations like this one, but more so in other people's situations. For example, again, I'll bring up Kyle Cease, because he's got this group and he does group calls, and he's now doing something called hot seats, where he works with a person one-on-one on a Zoom call. And it starts off by that person talking about a current challenge they have in their lives. And then he just has them see certain things that they haven't been able to step back far enough to see the whole picture. But what I've noticed in observing that myself is very much what you just described, is that, oh, I said, they're getting caught up in the minutia. They're getting caught up in all of the thoughts that they're having about it as they're in it, but they haven't stepped back from it because they've been in, situations similar to this, different circumstances, but similar in pattern, and they didn't recognize it. So they're doing it again. And it's so easy to see, I find it's so easy to see it myself in other people and their circumstances. But when I'm in it myself, I don't step far enough back to catch myself. So now
Yes.
I think like the next step for me is to almost just to catch myself whenever I'm conscious enough to say, okay, why am I feeling this way? Or not even why, but I am feeling different feelings. So that means I'm in the midst of something. I'm in the midst of a certain thought pattern because I'm afraid of something. Ultimately, like you said, it's when you're feeling that kind of a panicky, stressy kind of emotion or reactive emotion, then there's some thought that you're holding that's telling you it's not safe, it's not safe, it's not safe, you better do something. So if you can stand back from that and just say, oh, that's just my ego getting all panicky and fearful again. If I can step back from that, I can see the whole picture and then maybe even walk around it. And you mentioned, you used the word onion too, and I kept thinking of two things, and I'll let you give you a chance to respond here. But the things I was thinking of was one, I was thinking is very close to a toroidal shape as well. It seems like so much in energy in life is based around that toroidal image or pattern, if you will. And also I was thinking of onions because I thought, isn't that interesting that we choose onions? Because what happens when you peel onions with your hands? You just generally tend to tear up and cry and release something because the onion or the energy of the onion or that experience is creating something for you to let go of. And so a lot of things that I see in Kyle's work is, and he even says this, and I find it surprising because I don't feel like I operate that way, but maybe it's just a resistance in me. But he says a lot of times people will release something when they cry. And I'm going, that's great. I don't tend to do that, although I do find it interesting that I have a blockage in one of my tear draining ducts. So instead of the water going through the duct, it tends to, pool up, and then I have to kind of wipe it off. But it's just interesting. I just find the parallels kind of cool.
There's many ways of releasing. Tears is one of them. It depends on what it is. Again, so many different aspects to the energetics that are ongoing right now. The onion bit for me is more purely about the layers. The release of the tears and all the rest of it. Yeah, take it as you will. Take the analogy as far as you wish, but it's just the layer after layer after layer after layer, and each layer's got the same things.
Yeah.
So this thing you're talking to about not stepping back or stepping outside, we get in the going into something new, into the fearful, into the lack of control, into the outside of the norm. That's when we start to get small. And that's when the ego stories tell you you're only small, you're tiny, and everything could go wrong. It's the stepping out of that. You're talking about stepping back or into the observer role, looking at it from a disconnected point of view, dematerializing, removing the existential, becoming transcendental, sitting in the audience, watching the show going on, as opposed to being a part of the show. If you're the actor, you've got a role and you've got a script. You haven't got any choices. If you're in the audience, you create the storyline in your own, and you can do what you will with it. And you can see more. You can see more of the show going on. So we are the audience. We're not the actor. This is the point. This is what I'm trying to get to. And each individual is much more than they believe themselves to be. And if you can, if you can sit back, and you'll have done this too, if you can sit back and observe your own thoughts from a point of neutral, or however you wish to observe them, then who is that's observing the thoughts? If you can step outside of your own thoughts and observe them, then who is that? If that's not you. And if you can step outside of your thoughts, then you are not your thoughts, right?
Right.
And therefore your thoughts are meaningless to you. You make your own decisions, not your thoughts. But of course, when you think you're your thoughts or your beliefs, when you think that you're your beliefs, well, I believe this. And I've told you before that, but I love the word idiotic now, because idiotic is literally the word that means belief in beliefs. So anything external that you've been given that you believe in is idiotic by its etymology. And I'm not trying to say it's idiotic, you're a fool. No, it's actually the base word for it. It means to believe in something external to the self that you don't know. Of course, if you're your observer, you're your own observer, then everything else is up to you to choose. So you can choose your belief, you can choose your thoughts, you can choose all of this is now a choice. But when you believe that you are your thoughts, or that your belief is to be held, you have no choice. I know it sounds like it's steps and steps and steps away, but it's so fucking simple. Once you start to, I suppose, hang on, yeah, it is simple. Once you start to actually do it, once you start to practice it and say every moment, when you get that hole in your chest, when everything becomes anxiety, when the fear starts to come in and everything, you're frozen, right?
Quite well. Yeah, I know that one.
Right. That's the point where you go and sit down in a quiet room and you have a little step outside of it and say, what's this? This is the timing. That's when you step in. You actually sit there and you step into that. What are you? Hello. What are you here for? Is there something wrong? I can't know. This is from the observer point of view. What can possibly be wrong when everything is perfect? What are you here to tell me? Oh, nothing. Thank you. Bye-bye. Love you. And then you can, I know it sounds simple, but it is that simple. And if you can catch yourself in the moment, and if you're willing to, it's fascinating. And otherwise we cause ourselves so much suffering. And what I'm talking to with the word suffering is not pain, but enduring that which is not tolerable or not acceptable. Nobody wants to have anxiety or these fears or all these stories ongoing. So we cause our own suffering, i.e. enduring something which is not tolerable ourselves. Why? We can always ask ourselves the question, why? Why am I causing my own suffering? It's nobody out there is doing it. Nobody out there is causing it. It's only us. And that becomes funny as well. We can sit in a room and say, well, why would I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And again, a conscious choice is not to do that. So the conscious mind then says, if you've got a beautiful, loving heart, which you have, William, full of love, full of empathy, full of compassion, full of joy, full of naive innocence, if you wish, and that's said in the best terms. Why would you allow that to be hurt by your thinking? And again, the conscious masculine mind should be looking after that love, if you will, and saying, shh, don't be silly. Come on, love. we sing it to the world. We are love. Come on, that's what we're going to sing. And all of this other stuff that goes on in the background just dissipates. And off it goes. Easier said than done, especially with what's going on with the outside world. Even though it's doing it on purpose so that we all step up. But all of this process is very mechanical it's difficult for me to say that, but it is very mechanical. All of the experiences are the same but different. Everybody has an individual experience, but it's the same as everybody else's. Everybody gets from point A to point Z in a different way, but they still get there. And once you start to recognize that too, then you can see patterns. Again, I'm not going to go too far with this.
Well, I got some thoughts from that. I mean, as usual, you say some amazing things, and then all of a sudden I get different pictures and visions from that, and it just grows. I love the analogy, going back a little bit. I love the analogy of the actor on the stage and also the audience member, and you can choose to be any one of those. I don't think I've ever quite seen it that way before, but because I've done some acting and also some behind the scenes work, I know what that's like. And I also then, as you were talking about that a little bit, I started to think about some of these freedom movements and some of the things that you kind of were alluding to right here at the end when you were saying things are mechanical, as far as what we see on the physical plane. I don't know if you were thinking exactly what I was thinking, but I was thinking of things like, you know, the American election, the Brazilian election, politics, some of those kinds of things. And obviously, I do like to follow that kind of stuff. I'm just intrigued by it, even though I've never followed politics prior to 2020, really. But I just kind of got curious about it. And I've definitely run into situations and times during the lockdowns and the jabs and all of that kind of stuff. There was that, and there was also the political thing in the States where they wanted Americans to rise up and fight the fix kind of thing, as they sometimes say. And there's this calling to people that some of these people who are like really ingrained in those physical movements, who are saying, you know, if you don't take action, if you don't do this, there's an implication that you're somehow a bad person, a lazy person, or whatever. You know, I'm a little uncomfortable with that because I'm going, well, it just doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't feel like it's my battle to make, although I somehow still feel included in the energy of that. So, and then, you know, and then all the other weird thoughts come in, or you're just a chicken, or, you know, that you're afraid because you worry about what other people think of you. All of that loud noises that you're talking about. Then all of a sudden I'm on the stage, you know, and I'm listening to all of the different spirits and the sound effects that the sound man has put for me, thinking they're real, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, I interesting, as you talk, I get little visions and thoughts of different things. And that's kind of what came up for me was, I like to observe what's going on, but I don't necessarily want to participate and enroll myself in the physical realm of that world, because it doesn't really feel right or fit right for me in my heart.
No, but also, I mean, I'm not talking necessarily about the mechanical nature. Maybe I shouldn't use the word mechanical. Clockwork, divinely organized, repetitive, beautifully put together and orchestrated. In fact, incredibly beautifully done. And the deeper you can get into this, the more as I said before, brother, the answers are in the inconceivable. So I haven't got the words to describe the ineffable. But when we break this down, the more you can see how incredibly I haven't even got the words to describe how divinely, incredibly, mechanically, clockworky, and all the rest of it is, but how individually suited it is as well to the amount that can happen, and it always brings you back. You're always going to come back to a path. It's just how much we fight and resist between point A and point B. One of the simple ways I can say this is, when you go into the next step you're going to go into, and as I said, we're doing this bit, so we're going from there into this complexity and back again. As we walk through this, there's a linear time between point A and, so take that analogy to there and turn it sideways. So it goes, oh shit, up and back again. So easy, back to easy. Like Randy says, I don't care for this side of simple, this side of complex, but simple, the other side, I get my left nut for. So simple, complex, simple again, there and there. Now, as we start to enter this, we can make a load of different choices. So we're going to start here, and we're going to make a choice, and then we're going to make another choice, and another choice, and another choice. Or we could just make one choice and then no more. And what basically happens is there's a linear time between these. And the more choices we make, this stays where it is. But the less choices we make, it gets quicker. So this is the point about stepping into faith and saying, I don't need to know all the answers. I can just walk freely through this. Without all of the fears and without making all of these choices that are unnecessary in the moment. I don't have to do them. I can just not do them. Now, there is how do I say this? There is a definite energetic higher willpower in choosing inaction. when everything in you says, take action. Okay, now again, take it as you will. So when all of the stories are telling you to do something, and if you can then choose not to, you've removed an unnecessary event, and that shortens linear time to get to the answer that you're looking for. The more actions we take within this that are fear-based, the more unnecessary events don't get me wrong, it will happen anyway. So this is the beauty of it all. You'll get there anyway. It's just how. And this is where we create friction or resistance in the moment. Choice of inaction, sometimes, especially if you do it from a place of everything in you is telling you to do something, but you know it's fear-based and you choose not to. Mm-hmm. There is a choice that most people don't take. Okay. And that's a choice that unlocks a new series of events, because it's one that you didn't take before. Normally people take the fear-based options, that I must do this because. What if you don't? And this unlocks a new set of events then, and a new set of choices open up, which become, let's say, different. And new opportunities to experience, but experience things differently in a free flow way rather than in a resistance way. Mm-hmm. They're both going to get you to the same point. It's one's easier than the other.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so many things that I got from that. First of all, you pointed out that you're starting from a place where it's calm and you're in a place of ease, and you're going to end up, after you go through this experience, in a place of ease again. So you can choose to go the roundabout way through all the fear, all the emotions, all of the fun, all of the ups and downs and all of that. Or you can take a knife and cut that onion in half and go right through the middle, basically go through the experience. And the other expression, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, was the other thought that came to mind when you said all of that. And I just thought it's so simple. Now, I wanted to add one thing to that, if you will, and maybe that will expand something for you to say. But we're starting obviously on the one side, and I'm talking linear here. So if you're beyond linear, then you can ignore this part. But you're starting in the present, in a place where you're at, and you're currently in a place of ease, but you're looking at something that may look daunting, ominous, terrifying, whatever. But if you can step back far enough, that eventually you'll get to that place of ease again. So if you're able to do that, even though you're in a place of ease now, you can't see exactly what that place of ease looks like on the other side. That's the trust part. That's the unknown part. But if you know that you're going to get to that place of ease again, if you're able to take that non-fearful decision-making process and go a straight line through, you get to that place of ease again. You just don't know what it's like. So there is a letting go in that process.
Yeah, and it's that simple. And we've done it many, many times in the past. Yeah. Each time we face it again, it sends us scatty, and there is no reason to. This is to trust in yourself. And once you allow your conscious mind, this is where, again, the conscious mind is brilliant as a leader, but not a guide. The heart guides and the mind leads, but doesn't think. It just puts what it needs to do into place. It's not creating all scenarios. It's just looking at the best way to do something that the heart wants. So the heart just wants straightforward love and simple. So if you allow your mind to do that, simple, then all stories of complexity are gone. So any stories of complexity or any stories of fear, any stories of this could go wrong and that, no, they can't. And the conscious mind then literally will overwrite the subconscious programming that brings this ego, fears, whatever people want to call them, into the mind. They just get overwritten in the moment. It's auto-tune. It becomes, don't get me wrong, there is a process with this. It's not straight away. There is a walking the walk until you know enough to be able to embody it. And then the conscious mind just overrides all of those. So there's not even a consideration of this is going to be difficult or this is going to be awkward. It's just, okay, next. Okay, what? Okay. And you just do. So there's no, you just be, not do. This is the thing about it. You just be, you're becoming or being or becoming rather than doing. The thinking mind thinks you need to do. The knowing mind is happy to be.
Well, I think doing isn't a bad word. However, it's an overused process that we find ourselves in, I believe. So if you're in a being state, yeah, you will get moments and messages that you need to do something. But if you're in a place of being, then it's a much more organic, if I can use that word, action. So that's why I think doing isn't a bad word. It's just something that we often do things without the thinking, and it's just more coming from that fear place, that avoidance place.
I'll give you a higher representation of this. When you start to embody a little bit more, when people do, let's just call it a God state, if you will, or a divine state of being, then you have to look at your integrity, honor, virtue. And if you start doing things that don't get finished, then you leave things undone. Now, the word integrity means whole. When things are undone, it's not whole. So the mind says, I must do this or I must do that, and then you don't do them. Well, that's not integrity. So this becomes more of I'm not going to say higher, because I look at it all on the same flat level plane. But once you start embodying a little bit more of the integrity, then you can't start doing things that you can't finish or you won't finish. It doesn't make any sense. It's not coming from a place of high virtue. It's not something divine. And why would you say, I'm going to do something? And this could be, I'm going to go to the shops this afternoon, and then you don't. Well, that's not acceptable. You can't. You may say, I might, or I may, or there's a possibility that I will, but you can never say I will, because you've now created a contract with yourself and with whoever else you've said it to, that if that remains undone, that's not integral. There's no integrity to it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these doings are throwaway concepts by the thinking mind in the moment, and the lips just move. And all of a sudden you're saying things that do not get done, which doesn't embody a higher virtue. It doesn't embody anything. In fact, it shows a lack of embodiment and a lack of integrity. It starts to get to this, you start to get a little bit deeper in all of this. So I don't disagree with what you're saying about doings happen. Don't get me wrong. Otherwise we have no action at all. But when you start to embody the other things that, being true to your thoughts, well, why am I thinking I must do that? Why am I thinking at all? These questions come in for me, why am I thinking? Shh, we don't need to think. We know. And that quietens the old ego down a little bit. But again, this is just a little bit of more of a mechanic, if you will. If you're looking at energies and the use of energy, if you will, and not wasting energy, or certainly not creating a negative spin on energy on that aspect, saying you're going to do something and then not doing it isn't a good look. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what its perceived value was. There is no perceived value. It doesn't matter whether it's going to the shops or helping your mother, whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference. It's still a contractual value that you've created and spoken in. It must therefore be done, not undone or left partially done. That doesn't work. So again, conceptually, doing is fine. Working on those things, we do what we need to do. But as you start to move forward to this and peel the onion back a little bit further, that doing becomes a being much more, because you don't want to leave things undone. There is no way that you want to not have integrity or to release parts of it. No. Why would I do that to myself? No. It's much. This divine nature is much more important than me saying I'm going to do that and then not. Did you? I think you get the idea. I don't know. Tell me.
I might have gotten lost on that one. I'll be honest. I think I might have lost myself.
There's okay. I'm not going to go into it too much, but the acts of integrity, the acts of virtue, the virtuous acts, the way that you must hold yourself, if you will, even with your words, to say that you will, I'm going to go I'm going to go to the park tomorrow, and then not. Well, who did you make the contract with? Yourself. And then you didn't complete it. It's something so simple, but it's something that becomes very meaningful once you start to refine this stuff. Let me just put it that way.
I had a question that came from out of that. At what point is a commitment a commitment? And this is not coming from a defensive place, but more of curiosity. I was thinking, okay, so if you make an agreement with yourself to go to the park, if that agreement is said out loud, then obviously, it's been spoken, so it's been definitely put out. But what if you have the thought, in your mind? I guess it's still the same thing. It's just that you didn't say it out loud. I'm just wondering about, like, then it becomes a wording thing, right? If I say I will go to the park and then don't go, then I've kind of broken a contract with myself. But if I said, I would like to go to the park tomorrow and then don't go, that's a little bit different. So
it's exactly,
but I didn't necessarily speak any of it. It could have been all internal because I wasn't talking to anyone but myself. So I'm not sure how that plays into what you've been talking about.
Exactly how it works. It's exactly that. It's just being true to your thoughts. So in the moment, you can catch your own thoughts and say, why am I saying that? No. And again, all of this is a process until it becomes automated. So it's just recognizing it, picking it up, the same as you would with the anxieties and same with the other things. Why am I saying that? Why would I think that? Why would I do that? And I'm not going to say names or anything else, but many will throw things away. Oh, it didn't matter. Yes, it does. Everything matters. Everything is important once we verbalize it or energize it. Mm-hmm. Even if everything is fake out there, once you start to embody what you are, and this is the point, we can all look at it as I'm only human. That's not true. So everybody's going to be embodying the fact that they are not only human. And this is where integrity comes in at the base level of being trustworthy. Well, what does trustworthy mean? That things that come out of your mouth, people can trust that you will do. Mm-hmm. Right? And if you can't even tell yourself that you're going to go to the park tomorrow and then not, how trustworthy are you? You get this idea. Again, I'm not trying to pin this. I'm having a bit of a laugh with it, but it's still prudent. It's still, prevalent. It's still part of the process that can make things easier for people to start to pick up on what it is that they are. You're divine beings. Everybody's a divine soul of eternal life and infinite. Yet we believe we're human, right? And that's just not true. So once you start to pick up you're a divine being, what does acting like a divine being look like? I realize there's lots of things going on out there that make that difficult, but nevertheless, it's a fact. Higher consciousness likes truth. And if you doubt that you're a higher being, or if you doubt that you're a soul, how much value are you carrying for your own self? Like, you're believing all of the lies. If you start to believe the truth, then what does a divine being look like, or act like, or think like? How do they carry themselves? These are the concepts, but most people don't think about that sort of thing in the day-to-day lives because of what's going on, and I appreciate that.
Well, absolutely, I agree, but you've definitely got me pondering for sure, because I wanted to interject a moment ago and say that there's varying degrees of how many of us, and I definitely include myself in that, as to how integral we are with our own word. It reminded me also of some of the landmark work that I've done in the past, where they focused on integrity as a very big deal. Like if you say you're going to do something, then you do it. And you based out of that, when the light is shone on it, I noticed that there were times when I felt very uncomfortable because I noticed I would make commitments and then break them, and I didn't feel, and energetically I didn't feel good about it. I mean, there was guilt there and all of that, But even if you don't have some of those emotions attached to it, there's still something that doesn't feel whole about when you break a promise. And I'm thinking of, like, I've broken promises to myself a lot, where I'm looking out the window, I see it's a beautiful day, and I say, okay, the forecast is the same for tomorrow. I would like to go out tomorrow, and then I don't tomorrow because I get caught up in my work or whatever. I'm thinking about that too, and I'm going, okay, I know that Lee isn't saying, well, shame on you, or, do the old guilt trippy thing and say, okay, you're breaking your own commitments. You're saying just to examine that and be aware of that and get in touch with that. But all these things came up as you were sharing all of that.
Perfect. I mean, if you think about it, what that's showing is shame, right? And it's a shame vibration. Now, that's not a very high vibration. So we can see the import of maintaining that going forward and how important it is. This isn't about pinning anybody down and saying you must do this, you must do that. Yeah. It's purely about thought, allowing people to perceive a different thing, a different picture. And from that perception of that bigger picture or that perspective, to reconsider some of the things that they throw away so quickly and so easily. When we get found to be, let's say, untrustworthy to ourselves or whatever, we tend to throw it away. There's all sorts of reasons why the brain can tell us and the ego can tell us it's okay. But where does that shame go? It's suppressed and it's hidden away. This needs to come to the light and this be removed. And this is again where mistrust and distrust comes in. How can you trust somebody if I'll do this for you and they don't? And we're the same. We've all done this. It's not like, and this is a constant thing because it's never been important. They never had value. Trust in these sort of things. Well, look at the politicians. Look at the pharmaceutical industry. Look at everything outside of there. It's showing you it can't be trusted. Yet everybody's trusting it or trying to trust it. What? They don't trust their neighbor, but they trust the fucking government. Come on. But this is where I'm just trying to sort of flip it on its head and say, how does a divine creature of eternal, infinite energy look like? What do they do? How do they act in this human playground? Can you believe that you are such a thing? And if you are, what does that mean? That's all.
Yeah, I get that message, because what I realized is the more that you are able to keep your word, even to yourself, like even if we're just talking about agreements you make with yourself, because the original thought, the original inkling, and I'll use that example again about going out tomorrow because the weather is going to be as nice as it is today. There was that thought inside of me that just came. And usually when those thoughts come like that, they're from your higher self. It's not you should go outside because it's good for you. I'm not talking about those thoughts. I'm talking about, oh, I really want to be out there. I really get the urge and feeling that I need to be out there. And if you start to get to the point where you're honoring that every time you see that in yourself, then what I'm seeing out of what you've said and out of that example and doing that action where you're following that instinct more and more and more without breaking your word, you're getting more and more connected with your higher self, with the divine, with all of that, which is what I think you're basically saying. But I saw it in a different visual. It hit me, and I had to go through this path. I had to cut through the onion to get to the other easy side, if you will. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's like I see what you're saying now. Is it like by being in integrity with me, I get to be more connected to the divine me.
Yes. And if you think about it, what you just said is, I could go out tomorrow, we'll go out tomorrow. And then you maybe don't because you get caught up in all sorts of other stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, but that all sorts of other stuff is a distraction, and it's an excuse as to why you didn't maintain your own integrity. You didn't follow your own guidance. You ignored it and you created, however you wish to see that. This can be taken on every single level The beauty of micro macro is that one thing that's tiny is the same as everything that's large. So not doing this is the same as not doing that. There's no difference in the energetic value per se. So the more we can follow the little things that we throw away, yeah, you get the point, I think. And again, yeah. This is trusting yourself. This is not finding other things to do. This is actually going, no, I said I would and I will. And that's being honest to yourself, right?
Something I've encountered a lot in the last few weeks, especially, is I noticed that I've been distracting myself. I'm just watching a lot of, I mean, I like to watch videos a lot, but there comes a point when you all of a sudden you're not watching videos because you feel like you are going to get value from that, but that you're just killing time, that you're just filling space, that so I've just shifted from that. So there's that time when I'm thinking, okay, I'm just distracting myself. I'm not really even paying attention to this video. I'm doing 5 other things and kind of only half hearing what's going on. And I've just noticed that I've been doing that a lot, and then noticed that there's this feeling of guilt or shame. And then I'm just covering that over. I'm saying, oh, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to do that. So
when you're doing the videos,
about that.
When you're watching the videos, what's your mind doing?
Oh, my mind is gone. It's like, it's either one of two things. It's either busy doing 5 other things at the same time, or I'm completely enthralled in whatever the video is, the story of it. It's usually like an entertainment video or something where you don't need any, precognition or to do anything. It's just entertainment.
Forget the words, entertain the mind, and forget the old words we've been told and the concepts and precepts we've been told. There's another simple one for the conscious masculine mind to take on board. Nothing doesn't exist. There is no such thing as nothing. There is no thing, but there is never nothing. You cannot be sitting there wasting time, because by definition, you are doing everything. At any given point is perfection. And at any given point, you are doing everything. Otherwise, the universe would put you somewhere else. So these ideas of I'm doing nothing, I should be guilty, I'm shameful, are the ego and the old judgment. If they were looking at me, they would think I'm wasting time. How can you waste time? By definition, you are perfect at every given moment, and you are doing everything that you must be doing right here now. That is a fact. And that's what the conscious mind loses, if you will. And the subconscious mind tells us all of these fearful thoughts. So I sit down.
I'll throw this in real quick. Ironically, time is also an illusion too.
Absolutely, it is, right? So I sit down and watch a lot of streamers and games and all sorts of things. I spend most of the day when I'm wasting time by making sure that my thoughts of anything that comes up, i.e., hello, what are you doing? No, don't need you. Or, oh, we follow this thought over there and we'll see where that one goes. Or everything that comes in whilst I'm sitting down wasting time is fun. I find it funky. And anybody can judge me all they want. Their judgment matters not. It's me. Am I happy sat there doing this? It's not a distraction. It's something I enjoy. If something else happened, then I would be doing that instead, but nothing else is. So I trust the universe has not got anything else for me. So, okay, I'll do this. And if there is anything else for me to do, then the universe will bring it to me. This is another thing another one of my experiments that I'm on is not forcing anything, just saying, I know that I'm in this moment perfect, and I will be anywhere I need to be or doing anything I need to do. So why go look for it? Why not let it come to me? And if it doesn't, then I'll just sit quite happily doing what I'm doing in the meantime, knowing that by definition, I'm doing everything. Can you do that? Can you start to think that way? Again, release all this external judgment idea, what they think. What do you think? Without the thoughts, how do you feel when you're there, quite happy with your distraction, watching this and going off on daydreams? It's beautiful.
Can you say or add anything more to, because there's the one word, everything, that seemed to, I don't know why, but I seem to bump up against it. I wasn't quite getting it. I just want to see if there's a certain perspective or something that you get around saying I am, was it I am everything or I am doing everything? How did you word that?
You could say I am everything if you wished, but everything. See, we're so much more than everything. For it to be a thing, it's manifested in reality, and reality is not what we are. We're the manifestors of reality, the creators of reality. So we're nothing and everything at once. From nothing comes everything, but we are nothing, if you will. So yeah, you could say I am everything, but what I use the definition is when people say I'm doing nothing, no, by definition you're doing everything. So that's the terminology I use. Nobody can be doing nothing.